They've had billions, maybe trillions of dollars funneled into their coffers. Has any incoming administration ever been better prepared for power? Asking this question. Democrats had no idea how to respond, saying, look, the left is truly rudderless right now.
I'm currently standing inside of this museum, which was built and curated by the Biden administration with $4 million in taxpayer dollars.
No standards will be lowered, and all combat roles will only have sex-neutral standards.
He has a mandate to do this. He's doing what he promised he would do.
Okay.
Trump is dismantling the Democrat superstructure. They've had billions, maybe trillions of dollars funneled into their coffers, ripped off from us, the American taxpayers, for stupid things like climate change or equity or inclusivity or whatever it was. And all of that money would just go back into them, right? They'd say, we're going to create broadband across the entire country. How many people have broadband now? Is it zero? Pretty sure. So here is now the truth of what's happening. Now, this story came out from Jason Stetman, and it was an interesting one because he's telling us that Trump is not only someone who won the election, but he's fundamentally changing everything, right? Unlike the early days of the first Trump term, Trump is directly targeting the real nodes of power. He's launching a multi-front assault on the regime. Now, even Politico is saying that has any incoming administration ever been better prepared for power? Asking this question. Never mind the first 100 days, Trump's team had a battle plan for the first 100 hours. They executed it with stunning efficacy. From the barrage of executive orders to the all-out war on the government, it has been way bigger than anyone foresaw. Democrats had no idea how to respond, saying, look, the left is truly rudderless right now. The DNC is still competing in diversity Olympics. Institutions that it transformed and won and controlled are now shifting. Schumer is shook by this. Babylon Bee is posting things like, Democrats warn Trump's unelected shadow government is dismantling their unelected shadow government, right? Going all in. And a lot of these are older posts. But what's happening is we're seeing this happen in real time. And Lee Zeldin came out yesterday and he explained this. There was a whole fake stood up museum that cost however much money, $4 million in taxpayer dollars, to a museum that had less than 2,000 visitors come through in 9 months. 600,000 per year to operate, 2,000 people in the last 9 months. So maybe they get to 2,500 a year. And here was their stupid little museum they set up. All of this is just a cover. It's just a sham. It's just like in the TV shows when they set up the car wash to launder the money. That's all it was. And the rest of it is just emboldening and paying off their activists and saying, oh, let's make some hazardous waste barrels. Here's what Lee Zeldin said this week.
If you were to visit the museum located here at EPA headquarters in DC, you would learn a lot about the road to environmental justice and climate change. This museum claims EPA pursues its mission by advancing environmental justice, equity, and civil rights compliance. A timeline of key events conveniently omits any mention of President Trump's first administration. I'm currently standing inside of this museum, which was built and curated by the Biden administration with $4 million in taxpayer dollars. As if this wasn't enough of a price tag to fill a room the size of an apartment. This shrine to environmental justice and climate change cost the American taxpayer $600,000 to operate annually. This agency has been spending $123,000 on cleaning, $207,000 for security, $54,000 on maintenance, and an additional $54,000 on storage. From May 2024 through last month, only 1,909 members of the public visited the museum. Even though it is free admission, this museum costs you, the taxpayer, $315 per external visitor. I have pledged to be an exceptional steward of taxpayer dollars. So this shrine to EJ and climate change will now be shut down for good. I will do my part to help the American people learn more about the amazing work of our agency to provide cleaner, healthier, and safer land, air, and water. We will do so without paying over $500,000 in tax dollars on a museum that is barely visited and designed to tell an ideologically slanted, partial story of the EPA. Under President Trump, we are ending the practice of burning tax dollars on pet projects that do nothing to help this agency achieve our mission of protecting human health and the environment.
Thank you, Lee Zeldin. And what was the carbon footprint of this building? I mean, that looks a pretty nice building. Like, how much paper, how many trees had to be cut down to wallpaper this stupid building and put together their fake timelines? A lot, I would imagine. That looks like it's wood. This is wood. Those are dead trees right here. So these people are going to come in here and they're going to sit on a dead tree who should be living and cleaning our air so they can watch an LCD TV that was mined from rare earth minerals so that they can feel good about themselves for their role in saving the environment. Pathetic. And it also looks pretty terrible. I mean, I remember, I think when I was in like 3rd grade or 4th grade, we had a student diorama fair. Anyone have one of those where you'd get those cardboard boxes and you'd open it up like those 3, fold. Here you go. Here's the scientific method. Open it up. My 3rd grade class did way better than whatever this did, what was here from the Joe Biden administration. This looks boring and pathetic. It's too much text. It's not enough interesting pictures. D- for this one. They're on probation. So Lee Zeldin is explaining, right? That is one example of the institution, the infrastructure that this person was explaining over here at the Daily Signal, telling us that it's all being dismantled one after another. And the author of this is called Jarrett Stepman, and it was a nice summary of what's ultimately happening, very prognosticatory. Now, Hegseth is also wading into it, right? He's been doing this time and again, talking about the trans standards and more getting sued over it. Said different physical standards for men and women in the U.S. military have existed for a long time, but there were also combat roles that were male only. Then, under Obama, to try to usurp the military, all combat roles were open to men and women, but then different physical standards for men and women remained. Now that's interesting. Today at the Department of Defense, we fixed this. All combat roles are open to men and women, but they all must meet the same high standard. No standards will be lowered, and all combat roles will only have sex-neutral standards. Very common sense. Pete Hegseth fixing that problem. And I thought that was always the argument from the left. Their argument always was, I mean, there's never the real, actually executed policy, but the argument was, well, if a woman can do what a man can do, why can't she just be like, okay, well, is that how it works? No, the standard was different. That's the point. So thank you, Pete, for correcting the record on that. We also see RFK Jr. sat down and hung out with Sarah Gonzalez. Amazing that she got to sit down with RFK Jr. over at the White House. And he's explaining that they are also going to be taking back control of our food, saying the agency was captured by the food industry. And ultimately, the oligarch, the Democrats keep screaming about these days, says we're going to go back to end the use of the GRAS standard. And we're going to go back through all the chemicals in our food, and we're going to test them one at a time. And we're going to be healthier, and the big chemical processing food companies are not going to be happy about it, and that's going to trickle down to the pharmaceutical companies who make money from all of us being sick, and they're not going to be happy about it, and they pay all the Democrats, and so the Democrats are not happy about any of it, of course, because they're losing their grasp on power. Here is RFK Jr. explaining.
In 1947, when FDA was getting its act together, they created this standard. The original intent was that every new ingredient be tested. Every ingredient of our food be known, be tested. We know what the safety and risk profiles are. They said there's some ingredients that are so well known that have been used for thousands of years, like flour and eggs and salt and sugar. And we're not going to require the companies to test for those. And those were, so they carved out a category called generally recognized as safe grass. Unfortunately, when the agency was captured by the food industry, they hijacked that designation and they said everything is grass. So in our country, every chemical that is now added to food is assumed to be generally recognized as safe, and no testing is required. And in Europe, where they only have 400 ingredients in our food, we have 10,000. In Europe, chemicals that are added to the food need to be first safety tested before they're allowed in. In our country, that was never so. So we're going to end the use of the GRAS standard, and we're going to instead, and then we're going to go back through all the chemicals that are in our food, and we're going to test them one at a time.
Amazing. I saw a video as I was scrolling around last night where somebody was recreating a tub or tube of ranch, a bottle of ranch dressing, like Hidden Valley Farms, whatever it is. And they had just an empty bottle, it was see-through and clear, and they just said, okay, I'm gonna just show you what goes into this. And the very first ingredient was canola oil. And they filled, you've seen that like with Coke or whatever, like this is how much sugar's in Coke. They filled the whole dang thing up with just this disgusting canola oil. And then they're like, okay, here's a little dollop of buttermilk in here, makes it white. Here's a little preservative. Here's a little salt. Here's a little this. Here's the other thing. It's like mostly canola oil. You're like, wow, that's disgusting. All right. So good to know. And it'll be curious to see if those types of things change now that there's just a little scrutiny on it. Right now, companies will start to go, uh-oh, we could get away with this for a while. Maybe they'll start to impose some self-reforms. But here was Scott Bessent. He's saying Liberation Day is coming soon. And for the first time, maybe since he was a college student, we're going to have free trade in America.
April 2nd, we are going to disclose the reciprocal tariffs. I'm not going to get out ahead of President Trump. He's going to announce them 3 o'clock on Wednesday. And I think for the first time in decades, probably since I was a college student, we're going to see a fair trade, and everyone will have the opportunity to lower their tariffs, lower their non-tariff barriers, stop the currency manipulation, stop subsidizing labor, stop stop providing cheap loans, and they make the global trading system fair for American workers again. And if President Trump campaigned on this, he has a mandate. As you know, he had a substantial electoral college majority. He won all 7 swing states, and he won the popular vote. So he has a mandate to do this. He's doing what he was promised he would do.
Okay.
Amazing. So Scott Bessent, Trump, RFK, the rest of the cabinet continuing to dismantle the Democrat superstructure, and we're going to be here to continue to cover it.